Hermiston City Council for Monday, March 11th to order with a declaration of quorum. We have a few empty seats here. The mayor and a couple of the councilors are at National League of Cities, I believe it is. So, Mayor, Councilor Linton, Councilor McCarthy, and that's it, are excused. So with that, can I have everybody rise for the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome everybody. Looks like we have our Mr. Morgan is going to be covering for Mr. Smith today. So we have a couple of presentations and recognitions today. Recognition, Assistant City Manager Morgan.
Yeah, not recognizing me, recognizing our street department folks. So we had to twist some arms to get them to come out here this evening. So glad to see them all out here. So I'll go ahead and just read this from the staff report, and then we'll give them a round of applause at the end. So the city street network is one of the most fundamental parts of our community's infrastructure, upon which nearly all aspects of our local economy depend. City streets and sidewalks connect students to classrooms, workers to jobs, businesses to customers and suppliers, and local industries to global markets. Upwards of 30,000 people per day depend on Hermiston city streets to help them get to their destinations, and our street department staff help ensure that they arrive safely by diligently maintaining thousands of stop signs, street signs, traffic control devices, crosswalks, pavement markings, and many, many more. In addition to making sure the roadways are safe when the weather is nice, our dedicated streets crew is always prepared to respond when the snow flies to make sure that the streets remain passable and safe throughout the winter months. This requires constant attention to changing conditions and many very late nights and very early mornings away from their own families, clearing snow and ice to help the rest of us continue on with our lives, getting the kids to school, making critical appointments, or heading to work to earn a living. Just one day of school or business closures costs Hermiston area families approximately $2.3 million in lost wages. Those wages are protected by our street department staff clearing, plowing, and de-icing over 150 miles of roadway and nearly 25 miles per staff person. Of course, snow isn't the only precipitation that falls on our city streets, which is why our staff work constantly to maintain more than 400 dry wells, collection boxes, pipes, light lift stations, and other infrastructure to manage stormwater runoff across the 3,000-acre expanse of the city. Constant street sweeping keeps our community looking clean and prevents material from creating blockages and floods, but more importantly, this serves a critical function in keeping our area's water clean. Pollution from dripping vehicles that attaches to dirt, sand, and debris is prevented from entering our community's rivers, streams, and groundwater thanks to the continued work of our staff. Therefore, because of all of this and the many other ways that they help to make life sweet in Hermiston, we want to recognize and thank all of our street department staff. So I'll ask them to just stand individually, and then we'll give them a round of applause at the end. First off, we have Adam Klein, Alan Phillips, Gabriel Zacharias, Isaac Barajas, Jacob Noyes, and Ron Civi. So join me in thanking these guys. Now, I know Ron is a man of words, so if he wants to say anything, he's welcome to, but great.
And get it done, they do. We, Hermiston has been fortunate in all the work that you folks do. We have neighbors, cities that neighbor us that are constantly complaining about the problems that they have with their streets. And that's not really something you hear here. And that's on you guys. That's you guys doing the fine work that you do. And we definitely appreciate every minute of your time. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Thanks. And I told them they did not have to sit through the annexation hearing tonight. So
They don't?
I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, gentlemen. Next up, we have a presentation from the Hermiston School District. I believe I see Mr. Bacon there.
Well, good evening.
Howdy, sir.
Well, it's springtime, so we're rolling into things pretty fast. Just as much as we're all gonna have to start mowing yards here pretty quick. But calendar wise, we've got our evening tomorrow night with our parent mental health series is happening again at Rocky Heights. That's going to focus on substance abuse and vaping. March 22nd, a Friday coming up is transition day. So it'll be a non-student day for families. And then the week of March 25th, we've got conferences that are kicking off, getting ready for spring break. That begins on, I think it's the 29th of March. Yeah, good. So that's all happening. Just some key points out of the conference week. Just a reminder, at the high school, the student-led conferences, they're going to be holding a choir performance in the Commons from 5 to 6. They're also going to be having a showcase for the CTE and allow families to get a glimpse of what it might be like as a freshman coming in, see different classes that they're going to be able to participate in. And both nights there will be a career and job fair in the old Commons along with dinner as well. So the high school, that secondary level is really working to provide as many different opportunities to get folks into the building so they can see and showcase everything that's going on, and parents can ask questions about what's happening with classes. Middle schools are doing the student-led conferences also, where they come in and are able to, kids come in and showcase what work they've been doing, and teachers are available to answer any questions they have. And then the elementary is heading the same way with meeting individually with folks and scheduling them out. So we're ready to roll with that. And then we will resume school after spring break on Monday, April 8th. Along with spring sports kicking off this week. So they are in full swing. Starting on Wednesday or Thursday, we're running 3 and 4 different events happening across the district every single day. You can always check our website out to see what those events are, to keep track and be to all the different places that are happening. And then tonight at the board meeting, this is one of the enjoyable parts of the year, is being able to recognize our classified of the year folks. And so they are going to be recognized at the board meeting tonight. And they are Andrea Serrano. I just want to throw some names out there so that we can name drop a little bit. And so if you do know them and see them, you can definitely shake their hand and say thank you for the great work that you're doing with supporting our kids. Kim Henderson, Myra Coates, Christy Campbell, Marcy Savage, Sherry Haida, Sarah Ramirez, Lindsay Evans, Alicia Cornholio, Iris Rodriguez, Nancy Correa, and Richard Guerrero. So those are our classified folks of the year who are being recognized tonight. I'm getting faster. Any questions?
So what is on this, the classified employees, what does that entail?
Recognized by staff. So each year, staff are able to nominate folks that they have observed going above and beyond, providing support across the district in the various levels. So rather it's their custodians, rather it's our instructional assistants, it can be across the board. So we're able to nominate, staff vote on that, and then they are selected and recognized at our board meetings.
Well, that's nice. That's great. Please pass on the council's congratulations to those folks and recognition of their hard work. And we really appreciate all that's going on out there. Sounds like you got some good stuff going on happening at the high school and the lower levels. So, I'm sure that, there are the kids that love the student-led conferences at times. So
Their favorite.
I know I hated them.
Cool. All right. Well,
Yes,
thanks.
they had them back then.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
all right. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions before we let him go? All right. Thank you, Mr. Bacon. Okay, we are at the first opportunity for citizen input on non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to bring anything before the council that is not on the agenda is asked to please do the following. 1, limit your comments to not more than 5 minutes. 2, state your name and address. And 3, direct your comments to me as the chair. Anybody wishing to do so, please step up. Okay, seeing none. We are going to move on. Next up is a consent agenda item, or the consent agenda, items A, B, C, D, and E. Are there any items that need to be removed from this for the council? None. Are there any council comments on items A through E? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on agenda items A through E?
Nick Ridley, live at 1003 Southwest Olive Court here in Hermiston. I wanted to mainly just kind of ask a question. I was reading through the Solid Waste Advisory Committee notes. At least I think that's where it was in. And one of the, I don't think it's on a current budget, but it's a proposed future budget. It listed $695,000 for sounds like a water resilience upgrade. It specifically mentioned that it was a $5 million project cost, but that the city of Hermiston would be responsible for $695,000 of that total cost. My comment is around the fact that specifically in that section or notes around the meeting, it states that the only reason that that is being proposed, or 95% of the reason that's being proposed, is to improve resiliency for a single customer, and that would be Amazon. My question is if that gets considered or when it gets proposed, could we flesh out why the city would be taking on over a $500,000 expense for what is reliability for a single end user customer that likely won't need to be used very often? It listed one example of water not being delivered in the past several years. I can tell you I haven't had my water get shut off for power outage in the 8 years that I've been living here. I don't think it's an event that, or something that's coming up right away, but seems like these things get voted on, and then are going forward pretty quickly. So I just wanted to comment, see if everyone's aware this thing's coming down the line, and possibly get some early discussion around it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. Thank you. Any other comments on consent agenda items A through E? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A through E?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Counselor Meyer and seconded by Counselor Harden. Can I get a roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yeah, just as a reminder, as council president, I do get to vote, not like the mayor, so just in case anybody wondered why that was the case. So yes, I still get to vote. Motion passes unanimously. No items removed from the consent agenda. Next up, public hearings, annexation, comprehensive plan amendment for Hermiston Homeworks Incorporated. Looks like we have the hearing. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest from the council? Seeing none. The hearing guidelines will now be presented by city staff from Planning Director Clint Spencer. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. The City Council is holding a hearing to consider a request for a comprehensive plan map amendment and annexation to the City of Hermiston. The City Council will consider the request and render a decision based on the criteria established in 15608 and 15005 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances. The applicant proposes amending the comprehensive plan map designation and annexation of approximately 116 acres of land located east of Southeast 10th Street and south of East Highland Avenue. The applicant is Hermiston Homeworks Incorporated. The applicable substantive criteria relied upon by the city in rendering the decision to amend the comprehensive map and annex the property are contained in 15608 and 15005 of the Hermiston Code of Ordinances. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described above or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or land use regulations, which the person believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue by the close of the record at or following the hearing in person or by letter precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, based on that issue. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to LUBA based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. City Council shall grant such a request by continuing the public hearing pursuant to ORS 197-7976B or leaving the record open for additional written evidence, arguments, or testimony pursuant to ORS 197-7976C. For this hearing, the process begins with the staff report, followed by testimony from the applicants and other supporters of the application. This will be followed by opponents to the application. Finally, rebuttal by the applicant will be allowed. The public hearing portion of the procedure will then be closed, and the City Council will consider the information and testimony received, adopt findings of fact, and may render a decision on comprehensive plan map amendment and annexation.
Okay, the hearing is now open. City staff will now present its report. Planning Director Spencer.
Yes. So as we said in the hearing guidelines, tonight we are holding a hearing to consider annexation of approximately 80 acres of land east of Southeast 10th Street, north of the Hermiston Airport, and extending east to southeast to East Highland Avenue. And the area is highlighted in white on the map that is on your screen. The area is bisected by the Union Pacific Railroad, and the annexation includes additional land owned by Union Pacific in order to create contiguous city limits after annexation. Under state statute, a city may annex non-taxed land such as roads and railroad land without consent in order to address that issue of maintaining contiguous city limits. The inclusion of the railroad land increases the annexation area to 116 acres, as mentioned in the hearing guidelines. The land is currently designated as future industrial on the city's comprehensive plan map. You'll see that's the FI designation on that same area, and it's F2 general rural on the county zoning map. That is a legacy zone from the early 70s in the county, has a 19-acre minimum lot size and is intended as primarily an agricultural zone. The future industrial lands count towards our employment inventory as we're looking at our future growth. And later in the report, I'll talk about just how our employment land would be affected by this change. The area around the property is a mix of uses. You can see from the map that the airport forms the entire south boundary, and this is a high noise industrial and commercial area. The area west of Southeast 10th Street is in our what we call the Village Port PUD. This allows commercial and industrial uses based on its zoning, but it has developed entirely with commercial governmental uses up until now. Additional land west of Southeast 10th Street and north of Village Port, those would be the green areas that you see there, are developed with low density housing. And the area north of this property and north of the A-line canal, so the squiggly line north of the FI area, is outside our city and is designated as future residential on our comprehensive plan. It currently contains low density rural single family dwellings on 2 to 5 acre parcels. As the city annexes the areas in the future, the area in that future residential will probably likely see an increase in density as additional lots are created. This next slide shows the original application submitted to the Planning Commission and considered in February. The application originally proposed 48 acres of medium density R3 land. That would be the green. And then 5 acres of commercial C2 abutting Southeast 10th Street and BMCC, and another 25 acres of land south of the railroad tracks and accessing East Highland Avenue. That's the area south of the railroad tracks has no other access except for East Highland Avenue at the extreme eastern edge of the area under consideration. The Planning Commission considered that land allocation at their February meeting and listened to public testimony and deliberated amongst themselves. After deliberation, they recommended that the residential mix be changed. And so add in additional lower density zoning along the canal and along the future residential to increase compatibility with our existing housing that's along East Highland Avenue. So now you can see in this slide how that mix has changed. The applicant took the planning commission's recommendation and submitted a revised zoning division as shown here on slide number 4. They changed the 45 acres of R3 to 33 acres of low density R2 and extended that land from Highland as far to the west along the canal as is practical based on future street connections and topography. The R3 land was reduced to just 15 acres nearest to the commercial area. Commercial land was unchanged except for just some marginal adjustments to comply with their new proposed street layout. The Planning Commission recommended that there be a 25-75 split between R3, but also instructed staff to work with the applicant to develop an appropriate balance. The balance that's been proposed is a 31-69 split, so 31% R3, 69% R2. When considering an amendment to your comprehensive plan, we always need to consider compliance with the statewide transportation planning rule. Your staff report packet had a copy of a traffic analysis prepared for this development. ODOT also submitted some comments on the comp plan amendment and recommended that a trip cap be placed on the development. And we'll get to that in just a second. The analysis indicates that all of the intersections that will be impacted by this development will operate at an acceptable level of service through the end of the planning horizon. Also noted that the bridge over the A-line canal is very narrow and will need to be replaced with a wider culvert in the future. That's really what the pictures there on your monitor are showing. There is the A-line canal bridge. The engineer analysis shows that the bridge is structurally able to accommodate traffic generated by the development. However, the narrowness of the bridge will cause increasing delays as traffic increases and will cause the street itself to fall below a level of service in the future. So in order to accommodate any impacts to that bridge when development is proposed, a special assessment will need to be imposed on the development so to help fund the proportional impact of the wider culvert. Since at this point, we're only considering annexation and map amendment, which are map changes, any assessment of a fee would not be considered now. When a development application, such as a subdivision, a commercial development, something like that is submitted, the city can then really quantify the exact impacts and say what a per dwelling unit contribution to a culvert would be in the future. So that's when a specific assessment would be calculated. The analysis was based upon certain assumptions about the nature of the development, namely that there was a fixed number of single and multifamily units that were proposed. And so those assumptions are slightly below what the theoretical carrying capacity of the development would be as at full build out with R2 and R3. And since it was predicated on that assumption of a lower build out, the city and ODOT are recommending that a trip cap be imposed. This is something the city council may not have seen before, but total of peak hour trips of 657 trips could be generated within this development. That's assuming they build out as they have submitted and what the analysis is, with 200 single family homes, 85 multifamily homes, mini storage, RV park, something like that along the railroad tracks, would generate 657 trips divided up between 325 residential trips and 110 commercial trips for the area south of the railroad tracks. The remaining 222 trips would be reserved for that 5 acres of commercial development. Should something happen and that trip cap be exceeded, let's say they come in 5 years from now and want to rezone the whole thing to R3 and do 1,000 multifamily, this condition would then come into play. We'd say, oh, you're over your trip cap. You need to do a new analysis. We need to consider new mitigation improvements. And then those would be imposed at the time of that land use. It's a new thing to the council, and I'm not sure we're all comfortable with it, but that's the idea. Is a trip cap is based on your theoretical build out And then should something happen, the development pattern changes over what's submitted here, we require a new transportation analysis, new study, new mitigations. Amending the plan itself from future industrial to residential and commercial will impact our employment land and residential land inventories. We know from our current economic opportunities analysis that we need at least 145 acres of industrial land to meet our 20-year demand. Adoption of this proposal will reduce our existing 605 acre inventory by 45 acres and leaves about 560 acres available. So there is not a significant impact on our ability to provide employment land in the future. And just kind of thinking from a long-term standpoint, having all of this industrial land directly adjacent to low-density single-family housing might not be the best location for industrial use in the future. So that's why we're really considering that area between the railroad tracks and the canal is better suited for residential use than it is as an industrial employment generator. That being said, we do have a robust residential inventory with approximately 1,400 acres available for development or redevelopment. Theoretical capacity of that existing inventory is up to 18,000 units. And our housing need between now and our 20-year horizon is for 2,045 units. So this amendment provides the ability to satisfy up to 300 of those needed 2,000 units. And the 1,400 acre number that we use in our residential buildable land inventory is a little misleading because there are very few parcels of more than 10 acres in size. A flat greenfield site is not really adequately represented in our 1,400 acre number. We have several in the northeast quadrant of the city, but otherwise we're into a lot of very heavily parcelized areas. So while you might have a house sitting on 3 acres, that's not as likely to redevelop, even though it might have a capacity for 9 or 10 units, as a 50-acre site is just much more likely to develop and provide us a meaningful impact to our housing supply. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this on February 14th. At the time, they made a recommendation that the City Council amend the comprehensive plan with a residential split of around 25-75 and designate the remainder of the land as commercial. They then made an additional recommendation that the City Council annex the property with the recommended amendments. They recommended 5 conditions of approval to be imposed on the development, which are in your staff report. The most relevant sensitive conditions are the trip cap of 657 trips divided up among the residential and commercial uses. Land is subject to a wetland. There's about a 1.5 acre area that the canal drains into. And when you have a water of the state like a wetland, when a development application comes in, the city will have to work with hands to notify them that there is a wetland development, and they will need to evaluate and comment on any substantive mitigation measures needed. And because we are amending the comprehensive plan for property that is still in the county at this point, it's in our UGB. Annexation itself is not final until co-adoption of these map amendments by Umatilla County. If Umatilla County fails to co-adopt the map amendments, then a new application will be required. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Meyer.
On this trip cap thing, in theory, it sounds great, but who enforces that? And how do you know that?
We actually have a very spelled out condition of how it will be done. So when a subdivision plat comes in, they'll be required to say, this is the peak hour trip generation for this subdivision plat, and we will be monitoring it. If a multifamily comes in, we'll then take that subdivision cap and the multifamily counts and say, okay, you still have 100 trips left. That's all you have left on your residential area. So
So are you gonna trap somebody in there?
what it really does is it lets the applicant pursue his development plan. Should he sell the development, that trip cap is still in place. So it would really, what it does is it limits the ability to come in and say, do entirely multifamily or something, because that could never meet the trip cap. So it limits you to what the the development of, that's a mix of predominantly single family with a small multifamily component. That it's limited by imposing the trip cap.
So it's guaranteed then going forward.
It's guaranteed because staff has to monitor it. And it's spelled out in the conditions what the monitoring mechanisms are.
Maria?
And it's the same along those lines. My question was like, how many years will that take to meet the cap?
That is a good question. And it's one of those things where it is just going to be a running tally. And it's not going to be based on building permits as it is going to be on development permits. So you might come in with 100-unit subdivision. Well, if you know each house is generating, 5 peak hour trips or whatever, well, that's 500 trips for the subdivision. And it's not that we've built out 20 houses and this last guy doesn't get a driveway anymore. It's that the development itself is looked holistically for what generates the trip cap and how it applies to it. So it's done at the planning level, not at the building level.
Ms. Peterson?
So, just for the sake of understanding the big picture, how many hours, top of your head ballpark, would you say it takes to configure all of this within your office? I mean, this is doing the paperwork, drawing the maps, doing all of that. And how many people hours does it take to figure out all of this?
Not that much because we don't actually do the work. We require it to come from a traffic engineer as part of the development application. They're required to submit to us what those are because we don't even have the books that provide those trip caps and things. Those need to come from an engineer. We would then look at the report and tally it up and consider it with whatever else we've done. We'll keep a spreadsheet going for this area. And so between us reviewing it and having Anderson Perry or whoever the contract engineer may be in the future look at it, 3 hours.
So just so I understand this correctly, the trip count, is that a way of, because I know, I guess what the state of Oregon did, which is making R1 zonings basically be able to have multifamily. So is this a way that cities can, I guess, assure that there isn't any place that there is R1, there's just multifamily homes everywhere?
No.
Okay.
no.
Okay, thank you.
So, in regards to this area, I think I've got the trip count thing figured out. So, this, other things that I'm looking at. Are there any homes currently in this area that we are going to be annexing, or we're proposing to annex?
No, the property is vacant right now. It
All,
has-
the entire property is vacant?
Yeah.
Okay. And the current owner is the one that is requesting, or the sale is
That's correct.
requesting this? Okay. Okay, any other council comments? All right, public testimony. People wishing to speak are asked to state their name, mailing address, and limit testimony to 5 minutes. We're gonna start with the proponents. Is there anybody in favor of this? If so, please step forward. This is your chance. Okay, oh. Looks like we got one.
Hello, I'm the applicant. My name is Tyler Brandt. I live at 469 Southwest Cottonwood Drive in Hermiston. My company is Hermiston Homeworks, the one that's applying for this. And I think one of the state's goals is obviously the housing affordability issue. Hermiston has been relatively an affordable place to live. And if we want to keep that if we want to keep Hermiston affordable, I feel like we do have to annex parcels like this for future growth. The land that 1,400 acres that was cited earlier, like Clint said, as somebody that has been searching for land to develop, I can tell you it's very misleading. Like he said, there's literally 2 parcels online right now for sale that are within city limits. One of them is 9.3 acres over on West Elm. And its list price is 93,500 per acre. There's another parcel off of Southeast 9th Street that's 2.48 acres, listed for 171,000. That's almost 69,000 an acre. I can tell you that the parcel that I bought is cost $25,000 per acre. So the difference in the price of what's out there right now, that, you know, the developer has to pass that down to the next person. And, you know, there just isn't a lot of land out there for development. And so I just wanted to kind of convey that to the committee or to the council, that if one of our goals here in Hermiston is to keep housing affordable, this is one of the ways that it's done. And I'll be available for questions. I can speak at the end, but just wanted to state that part for now. And yeah,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brent.
thanks.
Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any neutral parties?
Nick Ridley, 1003 Southwest Olive Court. I appreciate you bringing up neutral. Have no stake in this, just some more general questions from reading through the proposal. You'd mentioned, Mr. Spencer, that there's no development plan. In reading through it in the traffic report, it mentions a 200 unit RV park going in the commercial zone. I don't know if that's just like a worst case scenario that was thrown in there for the traffic report, or if it was actual intent to develop that. My question would be whether, if that is the plan of development, whether the people who live over there have been informed that that is the actual plan for development. And the reason I ask is my house is in this area where there's a planned property use, a sign went up. But if I didn't go in, look at that sign, Google what was going on with it, I'd have no idea what the planned development would be. And if I lived there, saw that, technically I was informed, but then an RV park got put in that corner, I'd be like, oh, hey, like I would have assumed that it's, I don't know what falls under C2. I'd just be curious to understand whether the surrounding neighborhood is aware if that is the actual planned development or not. Better or worse, like I 100% agree with Mr. Brand, like we need lower cost houses, and in order to grow the city, that's going to have to happen. But in my mind, there is a distinct difference between high density or medium density residential area and the largest RV park I have seen in this region. So that would just be my concern about alerting the residents of the area of if that is the actual plan, because it seems like a major step difference in terms of how it would be developed and possibly how it's been presented, even though that's probably accurate in terms of legal zoning definitions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other neutral parties? Seeing none. Opponents, anybody opposed to this development? And seeing none.
If it pleases the council, I could certainly talk about our noticing procedures.
Absolutely.
Sure. So whenever we get an application to amend our comprehensive plan map, we establish a 300-foot mailing radius around the boundary of the property. We put signs on the property and we publish notice in the paper. So there's a three-pronged notice that we go. When something like this is proposed, where it's a map amendment, there's not actually a development proposal. So no, the RV park is not part of the noticing. The RV park is something that the applicant would like to do. It's subject to a separate land use notice at such time that the land is actually under city jurisdiction. Right now, it's in the county. We can't approve any permits for an RV park, for commercial development, even for a house. We can't approve any of those permits because right now it's not under our jurisdiction. Once it's in the city limits, it would then fall under special notice for that. If an RV park were proposed, it's what we call a site plan. That would be, we would then take 100-foot boundary around that, do a notice on, by direct mail, notice on the property via sign, and then the site plan would be then mailed out within that and be available for anyone to pick up. So it's, no, the RV park is not part of the noticing now. The RV park is an aspirational goal and really forms the basis of a lot of what that trip cap is based on. The applicant really feels that that is a good spot for an RV park. It could just as easily be mini storage. That's also a very low trip generating thing. But the thing is, when you have 25 acres of commercial development, if you're looking at worst case scenario, yeah, that could be just a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Wendy's, a Taco Bell as you're going down along there. And that would be, 5,000 trips an hour that it would generate. And it would change the assumptions of the development. So that's really where the trip cap comes from. They're saying we do not want to do those type of high intensity uses on the commercial property. There's a trip cap of 110 peak hour trips for that long, narrow stretch. And that's an example that they used of what is a low trip generator.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. I appreciate your clarification on that. Hope that answers questions out there. And no matter what, this is still subject to, county commissioners approving it as well. So until that takes place, this is theoretical.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Having gone through all the proponents, neutral and opponents, I'm gonna say the hearing is now closed. City staff will now present its finding of fact. Mr.
Your-
Spencer.
Your staff report in Exhibit A has several pages of findings of fact that address the statewide planning goals as well as our comprehensive plan policies and our criteria in our development code. I would be happy to answer any questions about them. They have been amended subject to testimony presented to the Planning Commission. A few changes were made to reflect land inventory changes as a result of changing the residential balance, and be happy to answer any questions.
Council have any questions for Mr. Spencer at this time? Okay, seeing that. Is there any further council discussion on this? All right. We have an action motion to adopt finding of facts.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Meyer, second by Ms. Duran. Can I get a roll call?
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so we've accepted that. Motion to impose conditions of approval. Can I get a motion to approve the conditions of approval?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mr. Harden. Roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously as well. All right. So now it's on to the city or to the county to see what they think. Next, ordinance number 2356, comprehensive plan amendment, Hermiston Homeworks Incorporated. Assistant City Manager Morgan.
You close the hearing.
This is the ordinance for the public hearing that you just had.
Okay. Love those lengthy explanations. All right. Any council comments in regards to that, to ordinance number 2356? Seeing none, any public comment? Again, none. Council President requests first reading of the ordinance be read by title only and calls for a roll call. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Passes unanimously. City Attorney, Mr. Tubby.
Thank you. So the first reading of ordinance number 2356 by title only, an ordinance amending the City of Hermiston Comprehensive Plan map to convert certain lands from urbanizable status to urban status located within the urban growth boundary of the City of Hermiston in accord with the provisions of Policy 6 in the city's comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Tubby. Council President requests that the ordinance be put up for final adoption at this meeting and the second reading be by title only and calls for a roll call. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Passes unanimously. City Attorney Tubby.
Second reading of ordinance number 2356 by title only, an ordinance amending the City of Hermiston Comprehensive Plan map to convert certain lands from urbanizable status to urban status located within the urban growth boundary of the City of Hermiston in accord with the provisions of Policy 6 in the city's comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Tubby. Motion that ordinance 2356 be adopted and become effective 30 days after co-adoption by the City Council and the Umatilla County Board of Commissioners. Roll call. Or can I get a motion?
So moved.
Ms.
Second.
Been motion by Ms. Meyer, second by Mr. Barone. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Some days. All right, next, ordinance number 2357, annexation of Hermiston Homeworks Incorporated. Again, with the lot numbers 23 or 200 to 500 out there at 1295 Southeast 10th. City Manager Morgan, another long one.
Yeah, this is the annexation portion for this action.
Okay, annexation portion. Any council comments on the annexation portion of this? Seeing none, any council or any public comments on this? Seeing none. Council President requests first reading of the ordinance be read by title only and calls for a roll call.
Yes.
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 Passes unanimously. The Attorney Tubby.
Thank you. First reading of ordinance number 2357 by title only. An ordinance annexing certain real property abutting East Highland Avenue and Southeast 10th Street, describing said real property, withdrawing said real property from special districts and designating zoning.
Okay. Council President requests that the ordinance be put up for final adoption at this meeting and that the second reading be by title only and calls for a roll call.
Yes.
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 City Attorney Tubby.
Second reading of ordinance number 2357 by title only. An ordinance annexing certain real property abutting East Highland Avenue and Southeast 10th Street, describing said real property, withdrawing said real property from special districts and designating zoning.
Thank you, sir. Can I get a motion that ordinance 2357 be adopted and become effective 30 days after co-adoption by the City Council and the Umatilla County Board of Commissioners, ordinance number 2356?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Harden, second by Ms. Meyer. And can I get a roll call?
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Next, resolution 2316, airport hangar construction. Mr. Morgan.
Yes, Mr. Council President, members of the council, this is the second portion of a project that we talked about at your last council meeting. At that meeting, we awarded a contract for taxi lane construction that was ultimately to facilitate the construction of a new 10-unit enclosed T-hangar project. And so went into a lot of background at that meeting. We opened bids on the actual construction portion of this hangar, and the bids came in very well. And so now it appears that after our approximately $1.45 million in available grant funding, It appears that the local match for both of those projects, the taxi lanes and the actual hangar construction itself, should be in the range of around $84,000, which puts us back into the area that we were hoping for originally. Again, we anticipate that the net increase in average lease revenue up at the airport after these hangars are constructed should be in the range of around $25,000 per year, putting the payback on our local match at a little over 3 years now. So right in line with where we were originally hoping for. The bids that we received 4 bids, with the low bid going to Silver Creek Contracting. And after review by our airport engineers, we're recommending award that contract to Silver Creek Contracting.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Are there any council comments in regards to resolution 2316? Ms. Peterson?
So do we know where Silver Creek is out of, where they are located?
Yeah, so Silver Creek's based out of Hepner, actually.
Oh,
Fairly local.
local.
Okay, any other council comments? Seeing none, any public comments in regards to resolution 2316? So none. Can I get a motion to adopt resolution 2316 and lay upon the record?
Second.
By motion by Ms. Duran, second by Ms. Peterson. Can I get a roll call?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 passes unanimously. Resolution 2317, solid waste rate adjustment. Assistant City Manager Morgan.
Yes, so Mr. Council President, members of the council, this resolution would approve a rate request from our private solid waste hauler, Sanitary Disposal. There we go. So a little bit of background for any the folks who are new or in the audience or watching online. So Waste Connections Incorporated does business locally here as Sanitary Disposal. They're the solid waste hauler for the city of Hermiston, all of the immediately surrounding communities, and out in the unincorporated portions of the county surrounding us. Waste Connections purchased Sanitary Disposal Incorporated approximately 2 years ago. Those local owners had been planning to get out of the business for a number of years, mainly due to retirement, but also due to the increasingly complex nature of the solid waste industry. It's becoming more and more regulated by the state. Additionally, it's a pretty volatile industry. And additionally, when you're getting close to retirement, it can be very expensive and pretty risky to conduct that business, particularly for haulers on a relatively small scale, which is what they were conducting. Let's see. Yeah, and so when Waste Connections came in, part of their plan with taking over operations was that they wanted to get familiar with the operations before they made any major changes. They wanted to operate it for a while, see what the actual cost drivers are before making any major changes. So one of the components that jumped out at them first was the age of the equipment. The average age of the rolling stock, the garbage trucks out there, is approximately 27 years. And so that's pretty old, even in terms of garbage truck terms. I think a lot of that can also be attributed to the previous owners of Sanitary Disposal, most likely deferring the purchase of several $100,000 equipment that they wouldn't ultimately end up recouping through a sale. So those old trucks were readily apparent once they began those operations. And so obviously that kind of begs the question, what's wrong with old trucks? It is a viable method to be operating to just maintain old vehicles. But the challenge with doing that, you see a lot of increased downtime when a truck has to go down because a component breaks down. That drives up expenses because you're either going to have the expense associated with having to pay a driver without having them out on the road, or you're going to have missed pickups for the customers, which is obviously not something that we like to see and we don't see a whole lot of, or you're going to go through the expense of having additional stock, additional trucks just sitting around waiting for when another truck goes down, which is obviously expensive to maintain additional trucks in order to avoid that downtime. And then additionally, one of the challenges, and really it's kind of a function of a changing business model, I think, associated with some of these types of equipment, is When you have 27-year-old equipment and one of their parts goes out, good luck finding replacement parts for those pieces of equipment. Particularly, this is different, and this is where the changing business model component comes in from what it may have been, 40, 50 years ago, where you could just have, a mechanic out there with a wrench and a blowtorch and, fix part of the equipment. Increasingly, what we're seeing with these types of specialty equipment, they're much more automated. They have much more mechanical and automated components to them. So it's much more challenging to just go out and replace some of these parts. You have to fully replace entire components. And so those are getting to be more and more complex with maintaining an older fleet of trucks. So in addition, acquiring new trucks, just the base model trucks are getting to be more and more expensive again, because they're coming with more complicated systems. They have more cameras on them, they have more automation and all those types of things. That translates to more expensive new trucks when they go to replace them. Additionally, Waste Connections recognized, along with really every employer here in the region, that our local labor market is relatively tight. And so the wages are required to maintain good talent and provide them with a livable wage has gone up significantly. So in the past couple of years, Waste Connections has both made a concerted effort to increase both driver wages as well as office wages to make sure that the staff that's providing the service has a livable wage and is high quality staff. So comparing services, that's one of the ways to compare, what's the value that we're getting out of this service. One of the challenges with comparing services on solid waste service is that there really isn't an industry standard to compare against. With something like water service, you can say, well, how much are we charging for 1,000 gallons of water? The challenge in solid waste service, nobody has yet standardized the size of like a cart. Some communities have different sized carts than others. And so this slide is really kind of one of the best attempts at comparing against relatively nearby communities with similar sized carts that are not operated by Waste Connections. So you can see the rates that are proposed this evening for the 35-gallon cart for weekly residential service. And just kind of for context, I would say about 80% of our customer accounts are residential service, and that's why we focus pretty heavily on those residential services. And so you can see that's a little bit higher than what a 35-gallon cart would be in Pendleton, but definitely lower than what it would be in Pilot Rock. Additionally, I just wanted to point out in the city of West Richland, which is nearly 20,000 people now, so pretty comparable in size to the city of Hermiston, they don't offer a 35-gallon cart. So the lowest priced service, if you want garbage service in West Richland, is the 90-gallon cart. So that's the lowest cost service, would be that $30 cart in West Richland. So additionally, on the 90-gallon cart, actually, these proposed rates are actually lower than all those other three comparison cities for the 90-gallon cart. So then you can see what those rates are currently for Hermiston residents. Then additionally, there's many more line items for commercial service, largely because commercial operators, they may want service 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. And so that's all included in the staff report and included in the rate request. But just pulling one of those out, so you can kind of get a general sense of how these compare again to those other communities. Looking at weekly 1.5 yard container service for commercial customers being proposed at $120 approximately. Again, that's slightly lower than all of the comparable communities are currently charging. Some details here. So these rates would be proposed to take effect April 1st. And then additionally important to keep in mind, because the council's been made aware of this quite extensively over the last year or so, is this looming issue that we have hanging out there of curbside recycling. So important to understand that the rates as presented, those are completely agnostic of anything associated with curbside recycling. This is an attempt to just focus on the garbage portion, get those right-sized and the rates adjusted appropriately, so that moving forward, sanitary disposal intends to just come more on an annual basis and ask for relatively small adjustments moving forward. On the curbside recycling component, the reason it's not included is because really the funding model that was concocted by the state legislature associated with that, where it attempts to charge the generators of recyclable materials to help fund some of those things is still pretty in flux. And so we still more or less a black box in terms of how much revenue is actually going to be coming for those. So it really would be impossible for us to predict what a rate would be from curbside recycling. It could be everything from those state recycling organizations. They could pay 100% of a new recycling truck, or they may pay nothing and only pay for new carts. It really could run the entire gamut there. So there's still a lot to be determined with the curbside recycling piece. So we wanted to make sure that we broke those apart. And this is just talking about the garbage portion. And then we'll be coming back for discussions on the curbside recycling as we have more information on that. I don't anticipate that being until probably at least the end of this calendar year. And then additionally, just important to keep in mind fiscal impact to the city. This does have a fiscal impact to the city that is worth noting. So the city, as is the case for a lot of communities elsewhere in the state, we do all the billing services for sanitary disposal for all of those garbage accounts that are inside of the city limits, and we have for many, many years. And so we charge a fee for that service. That includes the staff time of all the folks downstairs, speaking to customers, doing all that thing, setting up accounts, but then also the costs of, physically mailing out the bills, all those components. So we charge a fee of 10% of the gross revenues of sanitary disposal for all of their revenues within the city limits in exchange for providing that service. Additionally, we charge a franchise fee like we do on all of our other utilities. This one's relatively low at 3.5% compared to our other franchise fees. So currently for the fiscal year that's ending here, the end of June of this year, for that total 13.5% based on the current sanitary disposal rates, that should generate somewhere in the range of around $480,000 for this year. That's right in line with what we've been generating in years past, again, because the rates being charged have been held the same. And so based on these adjustments as presented from sanitary disposal, if those are approved, again, applying that same 13.5% fee, which is what we've been charging for many years now, we'd anticipate that would result in a net increase of revenue to the city of approximately $180,000 per year. And with that, I'd stand for any questions. Additionally, I would mention we have Kevin Miracle. He's the regional manager for Waste Connections in attendance this evening, so he can help answer any questions as well. And he might want to maybe say a few words. I might have misspoke or something here. So before we get to your question, I'll let Kevin talk real quick.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, just, I think one of the big things is after we got our financial baseline for the past 2 years, we were able to kind of see where we were going to land. One of the things that we do want to do, if this is approved, is, attach an amendment to the franchise agreement that makes everything based off the CPI. This will get us into a healthier margin. We know it's a long-term investment. The company's put in over $4.5 million in capital just trying to get the trucks, up and going. We have also, I think we have another 5 trucks on order. We're having issues like everybody else is with receiving these trucks. We had ordered 2 last year that we still haven't received. So we have the additional 5 that are supposed to land this year. So yeah, it's the increase is large, and I understand, but it'll get us where we need to be. And then moving forward, we'll be able to just base it all off CPI.
Council comments? Ms. Peterson?
So this question actually, and I know that we're going to get to it, but you already had my answer when we went to the meeting. But if you can talk about the reduced residential rate, it's actually on page 23 of the proposed master fee schedule. For those of us who want to look at it, just because my first question is always, it's like, yes, but what about the people who can't afford a rate increase? And there is a reduced residential rate that apparently not many people take advantage of. So could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so as Councilor Peters mentioned, for many years, we have had a reduced residential rate, I believe for seniors, if they choose to avail themselves of it. But as mentioned, very few people have used that rate.
And that is, but that's for a 35, not a 90, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Other council comments? Ms. Duran?
Yes, so you're talking about the consumer price index. So does that mean that it's going to be reevaluated on a yearly basis?
Yes, yeah, that's what we do. We'd base it off what the CPI is for that year.
So
It makes the increases a lot less than seeing these significant, increases.
so for next year, potentially what would be, if you were to guesstimate, how high would it go up?
3% is kind of what I'm guessing.
How many years will it take for you to be at a manageable place with equipment, with rate increases for your employees? How long would it be for you to be status quo, I guess?
With this increase, that'll get us where we need to be, and then moving forward, we base it off the CPI. So I wouldn't be coming back in here asking for a significant rate increase. The rate would increase when we go to the recycling, the curbside recycling, because there will be an additional cost. And just like Mark spoke on that, we don't know what that's going to be yet, because we don't know how much upfront money that the city's going to receive. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. And going back to the reduced residential rate, it says only one allowed at this rate. So if someone qualifies for that reduced rate, does it last a whole year?
Yeah, as long as, as long as they hit, all of
Meet the
the.
qualifications?
Yeah, yep,
So it can stay like that for a
yes, it
while?
will stay like that.
Okay.
Ms. Meyer?
How often do you have to replace those garbage trucks like that?
An average life of a garbage truck is about 10 years. We tend to extend it out just depending on how the maintenance cycle goes on the trucks, but it's a healthy way to look at it is about 10 years.
And the bulk of these were 27 years old?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Roy, you good? Rod? Ms. Peterson?
So in our meeting, you discussed having cameras on these meetings in case there comes well, my mailbox isn't in the shape it used to be. Those have been rather, worth the funds spent from what I hear.
Yeah, absolutely. It's called Lytics. It's a drive cam system that faces outward, faces the driver. We have a left-hand side and a backup camera. It records depending on if the inertia of the truck, it'll record a clip, or we can actually go back if a customer says, oh, I was missed, or you backed into my car, which we had one a couple of weeks ago. We're able to pull the video back up and we can see every single angle that the cameras have. And it saved us a lot doing this. And then also it kind of, it helps me with the drivers. Like if they did miss somebody, we'll go, yeah, we missed you. We will come back and get you. So it's a really great piece of equipment. For me, being a driver, used to being a driver, it really protects the driver against the he said, she said stuff. So I'm a big fan of them.
One last comment that I have is, I just want to say how much I appreciate the service. It doesn't matter holidays, you guys are always there. And whenever it's been my fault that I don't get my garbage cart out on time, I call. The folks in the office are pretty friendly and, they give me some grace and allow me some extras for the upcoming week. So really, it's sometimes a thankless job, but I know that when the garbage guys don't go and pick up, we notice. And so thank you for the service that you provide. Your employees are very appreciated for the work that they do. And I know you're in a tough situation coming in and assessing and seeing all the needs that your company has. It's going to be very tough, I think, on some of our consumers. And, you know, I hope that, like you said, you don't come back very often to ask for a price increase, because it really hurts those people that are on tight budgets.
That's why I think attaching it to a CPI, it levels the playing field once we get up to where we need to be. And then it's not these big jumps or waiting 3 or 4 years before we come in for, you know, an increase. And thank you for the nice comments.
I guess my comment might be more with the city manager. Typically when we have rate increases or we have a discussion and work session, I don't feel like we really did have one on this conversation. I feel like we've had someone when we've talked about water increases or electrical increases. And granted, I understand this is another entity. It's not really our own. But I personally, for me, I like to have a work session so we can talk about it and then have time between the work session and then the next council session to make a decision. Versus, I mean, I understand we got the packet about a week ago, but I like to have things fleshed out and have community conversations about it. But that being said, I don't know if that's something that could be done for the next time around. I would just really appreciate having all the information fleshed out in a work session and then having a conversation about it in the resolution rather than all at once in one sitting.
And Councillor Peterson and Councillor McCarthy sit on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And so this was presented to them earlier this month. And so that's typically been our approach on the solid waste rate adjustments, is take it to the Solid Waste Committee and then it comes here.
Yes, ma'am.
The solid waste has never really had any kind of a schedule rate increases. They were always really kind of very few and far between. And so I'm absolutely sure it's justified.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, in mind, I'm looking at this as well, and you know, it is a big jump, you know, and it is a big thing to drop this big of a bomb all at once. And I understand the need. So, you know, it's I want to say disappointing that, you know, maybe we couldn't have found a way to made this a little bit easier on the customers and our citizens, given a little bit of time to warm to the fact, so to speak. Not sure how to go from that, but in any case. Okay, public comment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Nick Ridland, 1003 Southwest Olive Court. I would like to also resonate that in an industry like that, that's heavy fuel and heavy labor is their top expenses. It's probably very hard to keep up and keep track. And looking at this, and Mr. Primer kind of reiterating your thought on what could be done in order to lower the burden to citizens. My mind immediately jumps to that $180,000 that we're saying is going to be added to the general fund. That's coming directly out of Hermiston residents. It's effectively going to be the same structure as any of the fees that we've imposed over the last little bit. It's 13.5% on this proposed rate increase that's going to go towards our general fund, coming from our citizens. And it's not directly going to a 37.5% increase in the service that the city's delivering. They're not sending out 37.5% more bills. They're not collecting 37.5% more bills. It was covered by the $480,000 this year. It seems like The waste department is obviously, they're running a business, they're factoring in that 13.5% into their rate increase here. That 180 seems like something that's already covered in our budget. We've already increased our budget enough to cover all of our forecasted expenses. That 180 seems like something could be done with it right now to make that rate increase to your residences or your, the residents of the town slightly less. But I don't see an expense that's attached to it. Right now, it's just a revenue. So based on our last meeting, that might not even get factored into the budget. Just a thought. Seems like something could be done. An adjustment could be made to not add that 13.5% because I don't, unless if we weren't able to deliver that service this year with the 480, I'm not sure why we'd need it next year. And it could make a change. And then we go to CPI and maybe we lowered the cost to the residents for 2024 by a little bit. Thank you.
Care to comment on that, Mr. Morgan?
I mean, maybe the only components, again, so those numbers that we were showing for this fiscal year, that, you know, we wouldn't show an expense this year. That additional $180,000 that wouldn't take place until these rates have been in effect for an entire calendar year. So we'd probably see a slight increase for the remainder of this fiscal year and then an increase into next year. But again, that's a question for the council. I mean, the numbers are what they are.
Okay. I would entertain a motion. Oh, public comment. Yes, I'm sorry. Continue on.
My name's Alberto Munoz, 1480 Northeast Kenna Drive, here in town. I just want to first off address that price increase, you know, just to plus one a lot of the points made here, definitely affects our citizens. And it's going to be, you know, can be difficult for some of them. But just from looking at some of the data presented here, it's definitely clear that, you know, kind of touching on the point made earlier about the housing developments and the future of our city, it seems like something like this is needed to kind of keep up with that, you know, helping sanitary disposal, you know, with these costs, can modernize, you know, some of the equipment that we talked about, some of the services that they offer our community. And I see that ultimately as an investment in the future of where Hermiston is heading. So I just wanted to speak on that. I know some of these points have already been made, but for someone who, you know, lives here, I understand the additional cost and how there's a little bit of a hesitant, you know, from people to maybe accept that at first. But I think when we look at the big picture and listening to some of the points made here, it almost seems like we need to catch up in order to be able to fully support where the future, essentially. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Any other comments before I? Okay. Now I'll entertain any motion regarding resolution 2317.
Council President, I just had one more comment before we vote. That's fine.
Okay.
I just wanted to, again, thank Assistant City Manager Morgan. Thank you for answering that question. If I remember right, when we talked about our utility funds, they're self-sustaining for the most part. And so a lot of the increases that we do here are for the funds to self-sustain themselves, the water, the sewer. I guess for me, I just really wanted to flesh out the information and think about it before putting it up to a vote. And that being said, I absolutely understand the presentation. I absolutely understand the need, the use that a lot of our equipment has had, and the need for change, especially since a lot of these rates haven't been adjusted for years. And so I just want to make clear that I definitely appreciate the presentation, understand where the figures are coming from. I just really, for the next time, would just want a little bit more preparation, but I'll make sure to have discussions with the committee members to make sure I'm right and up to date as much as I can be. But thank you very much for the presentation. I'm ready for a vote.
Okay. So we're back to, I'll entertain a motion regarding resolution 2317. Okay, motion to adopt resolution 2317 and lay upon the record. That's your motion? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution? It's been moved and seconded by Mr. Barone and Ms. Myers. In a roll call?
Yes.
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 Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
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 Motion passes unanimously. All right, city committees and liaisons. Do we have any committees or liaisons to report out?
Faith-based. We had a faith-based meeting, and a presentation by Stepping Stones. Things are moving along, but there's several delays on certain items that didn't, parts and equipment. So, but one of the things that they said they needed to is, of course, volunteers when you're going from having them involved in every 3 months serving the public, okay, compared to 365 days a year. So that's a big jump. So anyhow, so I know that they're working on staffing also, and so that they'll have somebody there like a receptionist, and so it's beginning to move, but I'm not quite sure where everything's going to come, what the exact time is. But they are moving forward. We also talked about I Love My City coming up here probably in April. Or is it May? Is it May? Okay. So, and of course, the faith-based group have been highly involved in that from the get-go that we've had over the years. And it's an exciting time, I think, for our city to come together and all out thing. Maybe Brandon, you have anything more to add as far as what with the I Love My City?
May 18th is going to be the I Love My City event. Still in initial planning phases of it. I did meet with Pastor Chris with New Hope Community Church, and they're kind of the lead on it. And so as we get closer, more will be developing, and we'll put out some more information there.
And that's about it. But we got a report on Terry Cummings, our chaplain, and he seems to be improving. He's lack of energy on his part at this point, but recovering from the stroke. And so we've put him on our list to keep him up and wish him well.
So, okay, thank you, sir. Other council committees? All right, council president's report. The only thing I have is we have a flyer here from the Altruista Club second annual community, excuse me, Battle of the Books taking place tomorrow, 6:30 at Armand Larvey. Looks like some good stuff happening there, some fun things. They're looking for donations to their read, walk, trail, and their Little Red libraries. So if you have tomorrow free, go give them a look. Again, that's at 6:30 at Armand Larvey. Council reports. No, a lot of head shaking. Okay. You don't appear to be one of the youth advisors over there. I do have one question for you, Mr. Morgan, before we move on. It appears that we have a new face somewhere nearby. Would you care to do an introduction there?
Yeah, that was a perfect lead in. That was one of my only items to mentioned. So yeah, joining us this evening, we have Ignacio Palacios. He's our new finance director, and today was his first day. And we're excited to have him on board. Took him on a whirlwind tour of all the city and all the departments. So I'm sure he can answer every question about every penny in the budget. If you have any questions. So, but he might want to introduce himself a little bit, maybe.
Love to hear from you, sir.
If you stand up, you're behind the counter there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Ignacio Palacios, thank you very much for the welcome. I just moved here from the valley, grew up in the valley on the other side of the mountain. So I'm a new transplant to Hermiston, very excited to be here.
Well, we're glad to see you here, sir. Hopefully, we'll get additional chances here in the future to have some conversations about the direction we're heading and what you can do to help us fix some of our ailments, as it were, that we're trying to get undone. Okay, Mr. Morgan, since I stole your thunder there.
Yeah. No, that was about it. Just the last thing. Well, and the other component you mentioned, Councilor Linton had placed the Altrusa flyer there at your dais. And then the last thing is, it sounds like tomorrow is the last day to file for municipal court judge and mayor election positions. Correct? Yeah. She at 5 o'clock. So that's all we have.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have anything to add? With that, we're adjourned.